And there we are.
Okay.
Hello.
Ready to start.
Hello.
Whether we're ready or not.
Yes.
Look, all three moms in the
Yes.
same spot at the same time. And as many moms, we are all three pretty exhausted.
Oh my goodness. Yes. It's been a week.
It's been 3 weeks.
It's been a very
Yes.
busy.
It has been 3 weeks.
It's been a very busy month, just overall. I mean,
But we're all in one spot now.
briefly.
Yes.
Briefly for like 5 minutes, and then we're not going to be in a spot again, and because we don't stay anywhere very long. Unless we're nailed down to a spot because something makes us be nailed down.
Right. Yeah, I have managed to stay in the same spot for 3 days now.
3 whole days. So,
Yeah, let's not have you stay in the same spot for that reason again.
yeah, let's not do that.
Not feeling well is not a fun way to stay
No.
put and relax and
I've
rest.
gotten a lot of sleep over the last 3 days.
Yes, but
So, can you tell people what happened?
Yes, we can tell people what
Okay, so
happened.
Kortnee and I decided that we had to have a date night. So she
Absolutely.
came to me at like 9:30. What was it, Saturday? I don't.
No,
the days
Saturday
blur.
night.
Was it Saturday night? She came to me and she said,
First.
"We need to go do something." I'm like, "Okay." So we loaded up in my car and we went to a date at the local ER, where we explored a wild party in the waiting room, and then swearing at nurses. And
the good drugs. Don't
and
forget the good
drugs, and then good drugs.
Yes.
And a little too much, so there was vomit involved. And she runs away. So
I'll be right back.
yeah, she's decided to run away. So no, Kortnee had a date night at ER, and so we with a really fun kidney stone.
And I had a Goodwill present.
Oh,
Because, and it seems like an appropriate time to give it to her because, yes.
Yes. I love this. Oh, this is so cute.
so most people. Oh, you want to show the camera?
You don't
Can they
need
see
magic
that?
to disappear. All you need is a destination.
Well, our destination was the place to be on
Right?
Saturday
Oh my
night
gosh.
in Wichita Falls.
It was hopping.
It was hopping. It was really hopping. And having been raised by a battle axe nurse, emergency rooms do not bother me. And I have a very clear idea of how things should be done. And there's ice probably still melting off the walls of the nurse's station. But Kortnee is doing much better after
Yes.
getting drugs. And
The good drugs.
she also actually got me in a grocery store.
I did.
And people who know me know that I do not like to shop. I've been here for 2 years now in August, and I have managed to not go to a grocery store the entire time I've been here because delivery is fabulous, and I don't like. And there's a reason for that, because
Yes.
I don't want to hate little old ladies, and
Yep.
I hate how they drive carts in grocery stores. So I'm
6:30
going.
in the morning, you're not going to run into a bunch of them.
No, I don't get as far as the pharmacy, so I don't know if that really counts.
So we made it in the door to the pharmacy and to the cooler just next to the pharmacy.
And the bathroom twice.
In the bathroom twice, yes.
So.
Because they pump you full of saline and then, yeah.
Yeah. So Kortnee's doing fine.
Yes, hi, I'm here. I'm upright. I've slept for 3 days. but-
Yeah. So we had let's go to the ER.
Right.
And then we had let's go to LibertyCon. And then we had let's go to the ER.
Yeah, we've all gotten to know that hospital way too well. Let's not.
Well, I managed to avoid it for a while. So
Yes.
Fair.
Let's leave it alone for a while.
Yeah. And we've been on, 3 out of the 9 floors, so, not bad.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you almost made it to the floor 7. You would
Yeah.
have had vacation on floor 7 if it had been a little bit larger.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So
And
yes.
I'm not convinced. I was looking at the results, and there might be 2 of them in there, so yay.
Whee!
With the way the kidney stones work, it's very likely that there are 2 of them, and yeah.
Yeah.
So preventative stuff if we can.
Well, they were playing ping pong, and she was not having any fun. So.
No. So, yes, preventative, lots of water, lots of lemon juice. So, adding
she's
all of
better
that.
now.
Yep.
I am
Yes.
better now.
And it's good.
Yes. I have a hell of a bruise from the IV, which is which is fun.
I have opinions about ER techs and their lack of bedside manner. So
I've had some fantastic ER techs in the past. That one was
an asshole.
an asshole. Yeah.
Yeah.
Had I been able to do much more beyond what I'd already done.
That's okay. You see, when you're bored and you're stuck in the hospital with your friend who's like sleeping off some drugs while she's waiting to get discharged, you can call the overnight patient care advocate and name an ER tech by name. Do you find a trend with me? You leave me alone with my phone, and I call hotel people, and I call ER tech. No, but I was unimpressed with his work ethic. So,
Yeah.
and I was sorely tempted to take your emesis bag and go pour it all over his fancy tennis shoes.
I very nearly didn't reach for one the last time he was in there. Just saying.
Yeah,
'Cause-
so we've had adventure.
Yeah.
I suppose that's one way you could put it. So it's been kind of fun.
It's been a blast.
Oh.
Learning experiences, and like most education, not comfortable.
No.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that this last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
I've had a kidney stone before, and the last time I had it, I was on painkillers for something else.
yeah.
And so nobody noticed it until it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
Which was not pleasant, but it wasn't nearly the level of discomfort that was this last weekend. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that again.
Good.
No, you're not.
Nope.
So we're just going to skip that part now, right? So, okay.
Yes.
They asked for my pain level, and I told them a 9. And seeing as I have notes in all of my other files at every other doctor's office I've been to, they are not to trust my pain tolerance. So I walk in saying I'm at 2 or 3, and they look at it and they go, "How are you talking?" They added 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, Kortnee copped to not feeling well and asked for help, and it's never ever happening again.
Well, the help will happen again.
The help will happen
regardless.
again.
Yes,
I mean,
please
that
do
part
ask
will
for help
happen.
if you need it.
Yes.
But yeah,
We're not getting to that level of pain again. Mm-mm.
no. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Let's just skip that part.
Yeah.
That would be good.
Yes. So it's been one of the topics we were talking about a while ago when we were all on the same side of the planet,
Right.
like we are now, which we seem to have problems with, was the role of Crone in society. And you had brought up that we'd lost our Crones. So, do you remember when we were talking about that?
Well, we have, and some of it is that culturally we value adolescence, and people spend their entire lives trying to stay young, look young, act young, shed their responsibilities and just party hard, and that's been going on for, I don't know, since the 50s or the 60s.
I think it's been going on since the time of ancient Greece, but I mean,
Well, that,
yeah.
but as far as the widespread
yeah.
American culture seems to favor, and I've written about this, perpetual adolescence. And so when you have an environment where 60 is the new 20 and grandma's out rollerblading and dyeing her hair pink, which is all fun and good, but you lose some of the things that are valued as far as what the crone actually does, which is not just dry up and wither away in forgotten desiccation.
In a hut in the woods
Well,
with her dried herbs and her messy hair.
to be fair, I would like to live like that. With occasional visitors to come to me to want like some of the herbs or whatever.
You know what that is? That's just being tired of people.
Yep.
Which is also part of the role of crone.
I have the option to opt out. I'm going that way.
Well, there's somebody, I saw a meme earlier today, and it was something to the effect of, I can't tell if I've finally grown up or if I've just run out of fucks to give. And that's kind of how I feel about crondom, is that you get to that point where you stop caring about what other people think about you. You're going to get it done and get it done the right way.
Well,
and I watch you do that.
Yeah.
And I take notes.
Take notes, honey. You're going to be here soon. I don't know. It's weird. I was thinking about this earlier today, that I've been referred to as a Crohn's for 20 years. I mean, and I'm just turning 60 this year.
So maybe it's more of a state of mind than
I wonder if it's a reaction to hair color, for one thing, because,
I'm
I
sure.
wander around with my white hair up in a bun, somewhat looking like Mrs. Santa Claus, but not with the attitude. Those who don't know me are like, oh, such a nice little white-haired lady. And I can pull that off until you get to know me. I get all kinds of stuff just by going, oh, could you help me with it? And they're like, oh, sure. And I'm like, oh, sucker you. So
I've watched it. It's amazing.
yeah, it's remarkably fun to do that. But no, I've been referred to that way because I think it's hair, and I think also I lost my filters early. I just did not. People who knew me in high school would be shocked and amazed because I was a wallflower and I was terrified of everybody, and I wouldn't talk to anybody. I was incredibly shy. But who was I talking to? I was telling, somebody asked me, why is it you just say what you think all the time? And it was because I walked into my friend Herb Varley's house one day, John Varley writer, who had a first Saturday of the month parties. And Harlan Ellison was sitting on the couch, which is not something you expect to find every day.
No.
All 5'0" of him. And I had been reading his stuff, and it was I was like 19 or 20.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, because we were just having casual conversation, and he was relaxed, and he wasn't on. He was on a lot, but at Herb's place, he was comfortable and was, giving him shit for being 6'6" and stuff. And I asked him, I said, so why is it you're so outspoken? Why is it you're just like, and he says, if you go all the way to the wall on the very first step, nobody will fuck with you.
Yeah.
And I think, okay, so the role of Crone, if we look at the tripartite feminine of maiden, matron, and crone, the role of Crone is, because she's past the point where she can have children. She's done with that phase of her life, if she had one. And biologically speaking, that vestigial end seems like it's an odd place to still be important, and in some animals it's not. Mm-hmm. But with humans, the role of Crone becomes instructor, protector, and to some extent a role model for the phase before her.
I'm so sorry.
And she has the permission, having gotten to that age, of being able to go straight to the wall for the jugular.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
society gives you a lot more permission.
Yeah.
And which is interesting to me. But you also disappear at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating over the last 5 or 6 years to have lived through society disappearing me. In some very interesting ways, because it's the worship of youth.
Yes.
Because you cannot retain any youthful qualities if you are older woman. Mm-hmm. You can if you're an older man.
I would argue about the not being able to retain youthful qualities as an older woman. I think that there's definitely that you can, and I think that I know what you're saying, but I think that we get this weird byplay of the older woman who allows herself to be disappeared.
Yeah, they cut their hair and they start wearing Sag Harbor. Right,
and the women that choose to. There's that poem, and I don't remember all of it, but the one thing that's the "When I'm old, I shall wear purple." Mm-hmm. But the theme of the poem is basically, I'm going to do all the outrageous things then that I'm not allowed to do now.
And my response to that poem was always, why aren't you doing them now?
Well, and I agree with you on that level, but I'm saying that
society does demand that you conform and do, and your life as a woman generally is focused on other people and other people's goals with children and parents. You are the caretaker of the family, kind of thing. And
caretakers tend to take a back seat.
Yeah, they do.
It's the disappearing mother. In portraiture specifically, where they would cover themselves with the rugs and whatever to hold their children, so the children could have their purchase taken, but nothing with the mother.
Yeah.
Which has always seemed so offensive to me.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why I take more selfies now than I did when I was in my 20s. I mean, aside from the fact that, technology is here and I can take a good selfie.
I take selfies because I'm holding toast and I'm actually taking a picture of toast. So
see, you're doing it for somebody else. Yeah.
There's several decades where my mom was just not in any pictures.
Yeah. I'm not in any pictures of with my daughter because I was the one taking all the pictures.
Yeah.
Right.
She's got tons of pictures with her dad. So
and the same is true for me with my kids because I'm the family photographer. Now on the other hand, when I was a kid, my dad was the family photographer. So mom is in pictures even though mom is not and has never been comfortable with photographs of herself or just her appearance. I think she's gotten to the point where she's okay with it now. And again, that's kind of the Crone thing too, isn't it? You get to the point where you accept that this is who I am and what I'm going to be.
Well, and society judges you so harshly for aging. They really do.
Yeah.
And they desexualize you in a huge way, which I find fascinating. It's like, really? With all this skill, you're going to ignore this? Not so smart. So, but there is that aspect that happens, so it's like,
well, it's I mean, because I think again it's a cultural thing, but then we get into the subcultures where because you've got I can go, okay, mainstream American culture does this, but underneath that there is like Pratchett's luggage. There's all these little feet going a million miles a minute that come together as that, and overall people tend to make a mistake of confusing Hollywood for reality.
Reality, yeah.
And reality is that grandma is someone that's valued. I mean, I can go back and look at how much I learned and how important my grandmother and my great-grandmother, all of them, were to my young development. And I always wanted to grow up to be like my grandmother, and I'm kind of going in that direction. I'm not nearly as adventurous as she was and is.
I don't know. I think you have more of a sense of adventure than you think you do.
Well, yeah, but she was out doing lots and lots of wilderness camping and lots of hiking and very active stuff, and I'm not. So,
yet.
Well, but the thing is that they can be such important role models, and mine certainly were to me. But then the other thing is then as a young mother, because I was so isolated from community, the one thing that I wanted really, really badly was I wanted a wise older woman that I could go to and be like, this is green poo in the diaper. Why? Turns out if you feed the kid a handful of Fruit Loops, boy howdy, is it green. Scary green. But and just things like little reassurances that as a young mom you need that.
Yeah.
Because you don't know with your first baby, and sometimes not even with number 2 and number 3, because they're all so different. So
I would have loved to have had that.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's a very
weirdly enough, me too,
mentorship role that.
No. Yeah. Well, I came to motherhood very late and had not planned on it. But I was 31, and when I was in the NICU with Katie, I was the oldest mom on the floor.
Yeah.
So I had all these 18 and 20-year-old girls going, "What do I do?" And I'm like, "You think I know?" It's like, but I didn't have that either. I didn't have any friends who had kids because they all had them much younger than me.
Well, and this is the other thing too that ties into this, actually, to the disappearing of the Crone, is that generationally we are seeing such a precipitous decline in birth rate.
Oh yeah.
I mean, when we look just at our own intimate group for the North Texas Troublemakers, there's a reason the 3 of us got dubbed the 3 moms of the apocalypse. Because for reasons, and sometimes it's because they can't, and sometimes it's because they chose not to, but for reasons so many people are not having children.
Yeah.
or they're waiting to have children until they're much older and their grandparents have passed, so they don't have that.
Yeah, they don't have the
that
generational.
connectional.
Yeah.
Well,
So
my one grandmother died when I was 8, so
yeah,
but when I had Logan, I was 21, and my mom was 42. So people thought that Logan was hers because a lot of her friends, a lot of people her age, because most of her friends were 20 years older than her because of how the ages worked. A lot of people her age were having their first kids.
yeah.
So she struggled becoming a grandmother at that age, even though like it was a completely appropriate age to have to be a grandmother.
Yes. I am currently 46 and I don't have any grandchildren yet, and I'm hoping that they hold off a few years because on one hand physically it's better to have children young.
Yes.
Yes,
I can so attest to that.
One of my son's good friends, and when my son was like 14, one of his friends had an older brother who was 21, and she showed up to drop off my son's friend and was telling me, as she's out to here, that she was going to be having a baby in like a month, which was pretty evident at that point, and that it was a 21-year gap between her oldest and now this would be her youngest. And I'm like, oh my Lord, I
never ever would I no. I mean,
so that was kind of one of those of, there are people that have children that late on purpose, but there are also people that have children that late because things happen.
Well, Father of the Bride Part 2.
Oh yeah.
The second one where like she's pregnant and like they have a moment of passion in the kitchen and all of a sudden she is pregnant. And
and that is something that can happen and I don't know that it's changed with the passage of technology.
Not here.
But so it's you can certainly see generational gaps, and back in the day when women had 12, 13 children, by the time you have number 13, number 1 is quite likely old enough to
and is riding herd on all the kids.
Well, no, is old enough to get married and have one of their own. I know it had. I'm trying to think who. Oh, Susanna Wesley had 19, and I believe 4 survived to adulthood, which is a whole suckitude in itself.
Okay, so just for a moment, being pregnant for 20 years.
Yes.
I mean, there is nothing about that appeals to me.
No.
I mean, it's just...
And this is an era when the rule of thumb was you lost a tooth per child.
Well, yeah.
Because of the drain it has on your body.
I can't... No.
So, but the Crone then was really important because mom was pregnant, lots of toddlers, babies, overwhelmed, a lot more manual labor. And
very often the midwife, so...
Right, and very
helping.
often the midwife because she'd been there, done that, and seen it. So...
You know, that's really it of Crone, been there, done that, seen it.
Yeah.
It really is that.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's just, I think it's something just about breathing enough air. You know, there's something in the oxygen that you just breathe enough air that a lot of things you're just like, oh yeah, I saw this already. So, I mean, and
I think yesterday I left the blanket fort going, I need someone to adult for me. I need an adult in my life.
It was like, oh honey, you got a lot, your plate is so full, and yes, you have every right to be tired. I think sometimes too, having an older person come to you and say, yes, this is hard.
It's valid.
It's valid.
Yes.
It's valid. This is hard. You are supposed to be stressed. You are supposed to be afraid. All of this stuff is scary. And you go, oh, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because you're still looking at a lot of it from the perspective of a child, where you didn't see all the stress and the heartache and the pain that your parents and all the people went through.
You saw the duck floating on the surface.
Yeah,
not the little feet.
Yeah. And now all of a sudden you're the duck and you've got the feet, and like someone coming up to you and saying, yes, this is hard, is so... It takes some of the stress off.
Well, it allows you to relax into it. I mean, which sounds weird,
right?
But
It gives you permission to feel those feels.
Yeah. I think that's something that we see that if you're an older generation, because, like being in the hospital. I mean, not that I just grew up in a hospital, but because I did, but it was also very much, I have spent so much time at the hospital with people going through horrible things.
Yeah.
I've had to unplug people in hospitals too now. I'd like to not do that anymore.
Yeah.
But there's peace in that when you know that's exactly what they want.
Yeah.
That I have been through that terror of what the hell is going on around me.
Yeah.
Enough to know, oh, okay, I get this. I have walked through this. I've walked this road. So, okay, yeah, all those machines are scary, and this stuff is going on, and you can be pushy with the nurses, and, so it's more like sharing of life experience and going, yes, you can say that.
And that's another important part of the role of Crone is storytelling.
Oh, yeah.
Because we go back and we look at fairy tales and folklore, and the name for them, old wives' tales. The old wives told these stories, which often had morals and lessons, as ways to pass wisdom on to the next generation. And sometimes, old wives' tales gets relegated now to more of it's kind of like an urban myth. That's not really true, but the reality is that old wives' tales were often very accurate and based in reality. And the one that springs to my mind as a scientist is miasma, which translates to bad air.
Yeah.
It used to be that the old wives' tale was that a fog that came in the night would make you sick. So you had to keep all your windows closed, and then the new hotness was no ventilation, throw the windows open, fresh air, let the house ventilate and the germs go out and everything. Well, we now know, coming back full circle, that there are some pathogens that are small enough to actually hitch a ride on suspended water droplets in mist and fog. So depending on where you are and what's going on, and I'm going to go with the common one of the 19th century, consumption, tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is a very, very small pathogen, and it will live suspended in the air for up to 7 days. There's your bad air. So sometimes we dismiss these things, and then we find out later that no, we shouldn't have dismissed them that lightly. And
yeah.
It's
the youth doing that. I wish I could be 25 again and know everything.
Yes.
Because you're like, and I think also something that comes with age and Crone level is recognizing that you didn't listen then either. And so you just don't bother. You just like go ahead and fall down. Just go. Why didn't you tell me I was going to fall down? I did, but you weren't listening. I just had this conversation with my kid, so she was like, Mom, why didn't you stop me? I'm like, did you miss all those parts where I tried to stop you? Oh, all right. And you weren't listening to me anyway because you were going to do it. Oh, okay.
Yep. And I've had those conversations with my teenager recently.
It's just, I've had those conversations with young men. I'm like, you don't want to go that direction. That's a really, look, this, and this, not the best character. But she's so pretty. I'm like, just because she's pretty doesn't mean she's quality.
Well, and you get the young men in the stories who would stop and listen to the woman at the...
Well,
and so you get so they listen and they get wisdom to move on to the next thing.
Yes.
Which, is one of the things I ascribe to my son. He's the person who's willing to sit and listen to
your son is fabulous
people
listener.
tell stories.
Yes.
Yeah, he really is.
And that's a big part of the fairy tales. The original ones, again with the memes. Have you seen the one with the little girl whose dress is on fire and about original fairy tale?
Oh, yes. My original fairy tale was in German. It's like...
Yes, so... that is a common theme that runs throughout all of them, is that the young person that is respectful and has manners and obeys etiquette and does chores or whatever, for the crone usually. It's almost always a crone. It's very rarely a little old man. Sometimes yes, but mostly it's the crone.
Because they weren't paying attention to the crone when they were taking it. There's a reason she lives alone. So.
And part of the reason that she lives alone is that he's dead.
He's dead.
Because little old men did not live to as long as little old women. And
partially because they were little old men and stubborn and
yes. Yes.
I'm reminded of LibertyCon.
Yes.
So,
But
where
so-
everybody suddenly could not pull up their own socks. So,
Oh my God.
So and that's the other thing too, is that crones tend to become singletons, even if they were married.
yeah.
Statistically, women outlive men by like 7 years, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And then you go to the human tendency is to marry a woman that's younger than you. So suddenly you've really set yourself up for, she's going to be alone for at least the last decade of her life.
Yeah.
Which, as a woman, is important for us to prepare for.
Yes.
And be conscious of and aware. I mean, I am, but that's because my husband is 20 years older than I am. And we came into this relationship with him having pre-existing heart conditions, which had been fine, and that lulled me into a sense of complacency, but that's a whole other... But we come to the point where we're alone, and we have
Well,
to
and also part of it is,
understand how.
by the time you get to my age at 60, and a lot of the men of my generation are looking for somebody to take care of them. And I am done with that. If you cannot wash your own goddamn socks, I'm not interested. You know, and I think you get to a point in your life, it's like, can't you just take care of yourself? You know, is how I feel about it, which is why I will have porch guys. They can come visit, but they go back out on the porch when I'm done, because I don't want them in my space. And I think after a lifetime of caretaking of other people, you don't want that to be the new paradigm when you move into a relationship with a person.
Right.
You want it to be as equals who are capable of taking care of each other and themselves. And there's not a lot of men in my general vicinity, age-wise, who want that. They want the 40-year-old who will take care of them. You know, because
Which,
for
to
whatever
be fair,
reason.
is not what my husband was looking for when
that,
he
I know
got me.
that. So, but
We actually had long, drawn-out arguments before he would
Yeah.
relent and admit that we were in a relationship, because he was very concerned about the fact that I
Yeah.
would spend the last years of his life taking care of him.
yeah. So being single, or a singleton, actually is quite lovely in a lot of ways. There's a freedom that comes with it. I remember when my grandmother, she was married for 40 years, and when my grandpa died when I was 15, she just suddenly had a life. She got in her car long before cell phones and stuff, and got her Rand McNally Atlas and her dog, and she was gone.
Yeah.
I mean, we're like, where's grandma? And this is before cell phones. It's like, you know, it's like, I don't know. She went to the East Coast. Okay. And she'd come home long enough to make sure all of her bills were paid, and she was gone again. And I'm like, what are you doing? She says, I am finally free.
Yeah.
I am finally free.
Yeah.
She spent 40 years free and loved every minute of it. We're like, and it's not like she didn't have little guys around her.
Yeah.
Because grandma was quite the thing. But she was not interested in ever going back to that.
Well, it's kind of one of my I guess my goals in life is to be able to just go and do things, and I've ended up there in a really weird roundabout way, and thank God I'm not doing it when I'm in my 60s.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have a lot more energy.
I have a lot more energy now. I'm
It's
going to
like,
do more fun things.
This whole thing at 60 part is going.
But this is why when I saw this, I was like, oh, that is perfect. I have to give
Yes.
that to her.
Yeah.
Because you're doing that right now.
Because I'm not gonna wait until I'm old to be outrageous.
Yes.
And that's and because of the way certain things in my life have worked out, I can do this now.
Yeah.
And when I want my kids there, I will go grab the one that I want to take with me, and off we
Off you go.
Yeah.
And you know, it's fun and it's freeing, and I'm hoping it's setting me up for amazing stories later when I'm tired.
Yeah.
But also, I can't imagine not wanting to do this.
Yeah.
So,
Same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, people are like, oh my God, you've lived such an interesting life. And I'm like,
it's not done yet.
well, I'm not done. And I have. I've been incredibly lucky because I met people early in life who were like, you do not have to live an ordinary life.
Yeah.
Do not
Yeah.
choose ordinary. So I didn't. And yeah, I did settle down some, but I didn't do it in an ordinary way.
Right.
'Cause I wouldn't know how. I don't know what ordinary looks like, but but embrace the power of yes, which is, my friend Dawn says, whatever the world hands you, just say yes and take it in. So because
I settled down long enough to realize that's not what I wanted.
yeah. Isn't that interesting?
And I've managed to say yes to a lot.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's like, you can say no. I'm like, I know I can say no, but I don't want to. And I'm saying no to more things than most people think I'm saying no to. But there's a lot of that sounds awesome. How do we do that? I don't know. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I am in a situation right now where I've got an essay I started to write and then put it down called Castle Walls. And where your world gets very confined, and on one hand, yes, you're stuck inside that because there are reasons you've made choices to have these walls around you, these boundaries around you in your life. You're bounded by, but on the other hand, if you accept that, okay, this is where I am for this season in my life, there can potentially be a lot of safety and comfort and stability in that. Because as much as I would like to go out and have adventures and stuff, it's just not the right time of my life for that.
Well, you're just going to have internal adventures instead.
Right. And I have the ability to actually create some really nice, stable routines I've been working on. And so that I have, that frees me up. Having those routines and those patterns frees me up to be able to say, I have the time to write. I have the time to take this Master Naturalist class and become a Master Naturalist. And I finished up the class last week, so I'm there. I've done it. And if I were off running around and doing other things, I wouldn't have been able to finally achieve something that I've wanted to do for a good chunk of my life. So I think there's a lot of people out there that feel claustrophobic. But sometimes you have to look at that and you have to be, okay, I have to be here for this season. That's not forever. But for this season, I'm confined into my own little castle. And you can build your castle in the clouds and have your dreams and for me, write right now.
Well, for me, when I had Katie, I had no intention of having children. I intended for this part of my life to be all of my life, right? And so same thing, I was suddenly bound to a spot.
Yes.
Which, quite frankly, turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I was bound to a spot and not quite so all over the place, it allowed me to focus in on my costume design career and my sewing and really honing my skills. And so I focused all of my energy into that and ended up having a terrific career because of it. Because being a mother and being essentially, what I felt a little trapped because it was a tiny little town and I don't like, but here I am again. But it's near a big airport. So, but it was that same thing. It allowed me the internal focus on the skills I wanted to grow. So really, you have a great opportunity.
Yeah.
You really do right now.
Right. And I'm looking forward into the future and I'm seeing that, okay, I'm going to have to make a job transition. And I really, really hate job transitions. And I realized because a friend recommended a book and I bought it and I started to work through it. And I mean, just even reading through it, I'm starting to have this really powerful negative reaction to it and realized that I was actually having a trauma response.
Yeah.
So at that point, I just dumped a bunch of stuff at a couple of trusted friends to be like, okay,
yeah.
And they were like, yeah, this is what you're doing, and none of this actually makes sense because sometimes having someone external to check you is where a Crone comes in really handy because she can look at you and go, oh, honey.
Oh, yeah. Yes, this is hard.
Yeah.
3 major transitions all at the same time. Oh, boy.
But in the fact that I was able to be, I'm thinking ahead. I'm not standing on the precipice. So I have time to prepare before I get there, and I have time to be like, okay, do I need to pick up some education before I get to the point where this job is done, and I have that endpoint, and that actually helps.
Yeah.
So I could work through some of what the stuff that's in my own head and be like, okay, this makes no sense. You need to figure out how to process better.
I was going to say, this is something, I'm going to be Crone at you for a moment. Don't, something I hear a lot is like, this doesn't make any sense. It's like, I think a better phrase is, I don't understand this yet.
Yes.
Because too often the phrases we use as women, we denigrate ourselves. I mean, she was apologizing for being in pain. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And I kept looking at her going, you hurt.
I do
Stop
that.
apologizing.
It's automatic.
So why? Why do we apologize for having our feelings? Why do we apologize for our response to our trauma? Why do we apologize for taking up space?
Because
we're trained into it.
We're women, and we're trained to be
Yeah.
invisible, to be in the background.
To be in the background.
And
to not be an inconvenience.
yes.
You know?
Because we're
I mean,
the
like,
caretakers. We're supposed to be taken care of, not being taken care of.
Yes.
I am
you know
still
what?
grappling with that selfishness of, if I'm not feeling well, saying, can you please make me dinner, do the dishes or whatever. I struggle with that, and as a result, it's actually not good for
No, it's not good
my
for you.
kids, my husband.
It teaches
me.
them. You teach other people how to treat you.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
That's why when you have a 9 pain, you say you have a 9 pain, because you are lessening yourself.
Yeah.
You know. You
Well,
just it's just there's.
It's something I've been reading a lot about is women's pain tends to be discounted more
Yes.
than men's pain
It does.
We're expected to live with a level of discomfort that men would never live for.
Yeah.
And I think there's also an element of some women, and not all of them, but these are the ones that are allowed and get paid attention to, are dramatic.
They're not women. They're girls.
Well,
no, I'm sorry. I do differentiate.
I see what you're saying, but I see
I'm very harsh about that, and I freely admit it. So
there are, and I think it has more to do with personality types, but yes, a level of maturity too. There are women that live for drama. I have had those in my family and interacted with them, and as a result, I tend to reflexively be like, I don't want to be that person, so I'm going to be as undramatic as I can think of how to be. Which is, I suspect you have a similar reaction there.
I have,
But because those women, the loud, histrionic, dramatic, I have a pain, and there's
look, it's a hangnail.
well, and there's a
So-
phrase in the medical community called the worried well.
Yeah.
And those women are the ones that give the rest of us a bad name.
Yep.
Because
I grew up with in a very stoic household, that you would deal with your pain, and pain existed, but being in pain was not an excuse to be rude. Being in pain was not an excuse to treat people badly. Which on the one hand, yes, but on the other hand, if raising your voice was considered being rude and treating someone badly.
Yeah.
So if you said, I'm hurting, okay, you're hurting, do what you need to do to hurt. Okay, just because you're hurting is not an excuse to get away out of chores, out of doing anything else. So, do what you have to do and get up and do stuff. And yeah, that was very much the level that I was raised with.
Yeah.
And then I married into a family where, oh my God, I have a headache. I can't possibly do anything for the next week and a half. And then
You're looking at the.
and I'm going, what? And I was, part of me was like very confused, and the part was like, but they were very loud in a lot of ways, and so raising your voice was considered hostile in my family. In his family, everybody was deaf and not wearing their hearing aids, so they were constantly yelling at each other. And if you
I love it.
If you were calm about something, obviously it wasn't a problem. So in order to get yourself heard, you had to throw hysterics.
Yeah.
Because then we actually have to pay attention to this because it's actually a problem. So like, it was such a radically different way of communicating.
Yeah.
Different
paradigm. Yeah.
Like, my husband was talking to me and his voice would get louder and louder and louder. I'm like, why are you yelling at me? He's like, I'm just passionate about this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Could you stop yelling at me, please? It's making me really uncomfortable. And he's like, and then I would mention something for weeks on end, like, this is a problem, and then he wouldn't, and then I would get mad and blow up, and he's like, why didn't you tell me it was a problem? And I'm like, I was. and it's just like we weren't cut
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
same level.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a very weird, and going into a situation where I'm like, I need to be taken care of now. And being able to advocate for myself. Like, I finally figured out that I need to do that.
Yeah.
And that I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And then also that sometimes it helps to have someone advocate for you.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, and knowing that you have someone else who will go to the nurse and say, this is not proper care, send that little asshole down to the doctor and get a morphine prescription, which is pretty much what I did. But I was icier than that at her, though, because methods of communication. It was
Yeah.
like, this is not proper care. You've left a patient writhing in pain, and that is not quality of care.
No.
So, and she was like, okay. It's like, no.
Yeah. It's like, I'm not drug seeking. I mean, I am because
Because I
hurt. But it wasn't one of those, like, I'm going to the hospital because, and faking 3 or 4 different symptoms. just trying to
Sure.
get
I'm just going to
medication.
throw up all the great tamales that I didn't
Those
want
were
to
so
have for
good,
dinner
too.
because
I
they were
was
really
so
good, but they weren't good the
disappointed.
second time. No, it was, we are as women judged in so many ways for how we react to things.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to wiggle my eyebrows as much as I do, but I do. Because wow, no Botox. So because I like all these wrinkles, thank you very much. So, which I'm reminded of Hugh Laurie, who came to Eugene to have a concert, and he was wandering around downtown. It was right after house, and he was like, I was wandering around town, and it seemed like everybody was so angry. And, and then I realized nobody here has Botox, and their faces move because he's been in LA for 8 years.
No.
But
I don't know.
yeah.
I feel like wrinkles and gray hair are kind of a badge of
you betcha.
I have been here long enough and I've done enough to earn them, and I'm actually kind of mad that I don't have any gray hair because I have earned it. Gosh darn it!
Yeah, well, it's interesting how society wants you to wipe them away. I mean, I went to the dermatologist to have skin cancer taken off. He says, we could do a face peel and take care of a lot of those wrinkles. I said, why? And he's like, I earned this. So, along with sunburns, but I mean, but society does tell us as women that we're not allowed to be dramatic, but we can't be too quiet.
Right.
And we can't speak up about what bothers us because then we're being crazy.
Yeah.
Which interestingly enough we encounter even in our friendships, which I find very amusing. Men friends, and I am a direct woman, and I have been for a long time. But I get referred to as a ball-busting bitch all the time, because I am direct and I am forward and I ask for what I want and I tell people what my boundaries are, and everyone's like, men in particular don't know how to deal with that.
No.
And are surprised by it because they don't expect women to do that.
Yeah.
But
Most women are self-effacing.
But when you get this,
and quiet.
when you get this,
Yes.
suddenly you can get away with it. It's part of the Crone mystique that we are expected to be the truth tellers, especially to younger men.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, that's something that I was told when I was a young woman, and I didn't really have a chance to do anything with it in my first marriage because my ex had lost his mother when he was 16.
Oh,
But
that's a hard time.
It
to
is a
lose
hard
man.
time, and
Especially for young men.
with hindsight, it's probably responsible for some of the issues in his life. Because I try to understand and give him grace, even though he was not nice to live with or deal with. I also
Wow, you're
know.
being way too polite.
Well,
So in 20 years, I'm going to ask you that question again, and I bet that answer is going to be completely different. So.
give me 7 days. Although to be fair, honestly, I've kept kind of a self-inflicted gag order on myself, waiting on my son to be 18.
Yeah.
Once there are no minors involved anymore, the gloves can
And
come
that's
off.
what, Sunday?
Yeah, that's
Next
Sunday.
week, guys, tune in.
Yeah, we could probably do an episode on things I have learned and would like to pass on to young women.
Oh man, that's a great topic.
Yes.
Yes.
That's a great
Because
topic.
impending Crondom. But but the thing is that I was told that you should pay attention to how a man treats his mother
Absolutely.
before you get into a relationship with him. And my current husband adores his mother, and they have this wonderful, fun relationship. And I'm very fond of her. I mean, we have moments where, because I put him first, and she sometimes treats him like he's 12 and he's a grown man, but I think a lot of mothers fall into that trap. So,
It happens, yeah.
But yeah, no,
I mean,
it's...
Yeah.
Especially when they're like 18, 19, right?
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
So
As an adult, I know it.
I guess what I'm saying is, if you're looking to get into a relationship with someone, look at how he treats the Crones in his life.
Yeah.
Does he ignore them and make them invisible, or does he respect and value their insight?
Yeah.
Because that's what I think that we have lost so much by not having Crones and in a valued and honored position in our society, because they can help raise children based on the fact that they know so much more than the first time parent does. And I see a lot of and I say help raise, and I'm not saying like step in and take over.
No.
I'm saying they have been there, done that.
They can give the moment of peace. The mom can step away and use the bathroom while grandma plays with the kids.
Right,
and
or
there's that-
if they're able to do babysitting, being able to hand the kids off for 2 hours and go off and replenish your own relationship is I never had that, and I would have so much liked to have had that.
There's something to be said for a woman who is considerably older. I mean, dealing with men in their early 20s, you know, or having influence over men in their early 20s. Not necessarily grandma, but somebody who's like 20 years older than, in their 40s, looking at them and saying, that is not how you treat women.
Yes.
You know, and teaching them from an older woman in the world in relationships as opposed to a mom or a relative, looking at them and helping further their education in how not to be monkeys.
Right.
You know,
in a way that their mother never
would never
could.
talk to them. Yeah.
Because
Because it would
there's-
embarrass the crap out of them.
Well,
So
there's conversations
Oh my
I've
gosh,
had.
yes.
There are conversations I have refused to have with Logan.
Yeah.
That other friends have.
Yes.
Because if it comes from me, like he and I have a very open relationship. We can talk about a lot of things. And he can approach me about a lot of things. But there are things where, you know, he knows I will either fly off the handle, or it's just not something he's comfortable talking to his mother about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That he's had conversations with other women in his life, and he's felt comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they've given him good direction and good
Yeah, because
advice.
older women can mentor young men in that age group in a way that, and it's fascinating to watch those relationships where they, like an older boss or an older friend of their mom's, who, or somebody who's not necessarily attached to them, can help them negotiate through things that they're like, if they ask their mother, they'll turn purple. You know?
I saw the most adorable YouTube comment today.
Oh yeah.
I've been watching a bunch of them, so I can't tell you which YouTuber it was, but she was making clothing in a vintage style.
Oh, fun.
And one of the comments was a lady who said that she's in, I think it was her 60s or her 70s, and she's got this young man who's like 20, and he's coming to her for sewing lessons, and they're making these shirts together. And I was just like, that is the cutest thing, because there is a lot to be said for kids don't always listen to their parents, but they'll listen often to adults that aren't their parents.
Yes.
And I keep saying, and mine are all going to be grown up now, so I don't have to worry about it anymore, but apprentice programs were onto something.
Yes.
Because you
they
sent
were.
them away when they were like 12.
Yes, they were.
And they were odious little...
Well, even your son has run into that with us, you know, because he was being disrespectful to you, and we were like, "Oh no, honey, stop that!" And he was like, "Ah." It's like older women going, "No."
And right now he's interacting with a friend of mine who's my age, a little older than I am, and this friend doesn't have any children of his own, And he actually approached me before he started working with my son, and he's like, look, this is what I have in mind. If we hit it off and we work well together, I have my tools, my dad's tools, some of my grandfather's tools. I don't need 3 sets of tools, and I don't have anyone to pass on all of my knowledge to and the tools.
Yeah.
So this is what I would like to work towards with your son, and I want to talk to you before I do this. And it was essentially an apprenticeship thing.
Nice.
And it's wonderful, and we go back to the not people who aren't having children or don't have children. Their knowledge ends with them. So
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why I've taken Logan to so many things that we've done.
Yeah.
Because he needs the influence of older men specifically, and other older women.
Yeah.
And he's gotten complimented on some of the stuff. He's like, it's just monkey see, monkey do. I'm mimicking what they're doing, and I'm like, you don't realize
this is how you learn.
Most people your age wouldn't either acknowledge that or wouldn't recognize that that's what they're doing. And it's been a good influence in having him around people who are not me, but who want him to do better and be a better person.
Yeah.
Which I think is fantastic. It's probably the best thing I've ever done for him.
Well, and I had this conversation about socialization and the homeschooler here at the Blanket Fort the other day.
Yeah.
Because when people talk about homeschooling, it used to be the first thing that would come up would be, well, what about their socialization? And I'm like, well, it's better to be homeschooled. You will be better socialized if you're homeschooled.
Rather than being tortured by other kids your age.
Well, it's not even that.
So.
It's you're compressed into your peer group, and you're expected to only interact with children who are 1 or 2 years of that bracket, that very tight bracket. And you're not taught how to interact with people that are much older or much younger. You're not taught the respect, because we're talking about your son is a very respectful young man, and that respect slows him down and makes him listen to the people that are around him, whereas the kids that I see that become this feral pack mentality of they're going to hang out with their buddies and only listen to what their buddies are doing and saying.
Which social media actually makes worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the homeschooled child, when it's done properly, is a much better socialized creature, and they get a chance to interact with the crone.
So you just had a moment that just reminded me of the thing I saw, because we have OnlyFans. The outrageously huge reaction to the Only Grans.
Oh!
Which was grannies doing things. Because...
And Depression Grandma cooking on
Grandma cooking,
and
or
nannies.
showing how to make pies, or, showing how to... It's because there's the ones where the dads are doing it, but people... I've seen this over and over and over again. Have you seen they went to Only Grans, which is grannies helping, older women answering questions for younger people.
Yes.
So I just thought...
And there's
a real need for that.
There's a real need, and there's a real desire for it as well, which I find with the return to the maker processes is, I grew up with people. I come from a textile family. Whenever I was home anywhere near any of my grandmothers, they were always doing something.
Yeah.
Which is a long tradition of the women making the things and doing the textiles and doing all of that. But also just hobbies and fun things. We did ceramics and we did all kinds of things, which I do not see in current. We had all kinds of stuff that we were involved in.
Yeah.
Because Grandma was doing it and she took us along.
Right. Yeah. That's where I learned. I learned how to beachcomb and forage for wild edible foods and stuff.
I learned how to hook rugs and do macrame and do decoupage and all these weird little things that Grandma did because they were just interesting. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And I never got string, but that's okay.
My mom does that with my daughter. I didn't have that with either of my grandparents.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
It was we saw them 2 holidays a year.
Yeah.
That was it.
And that's the other thing too, and I know I talk about the culture of valuing the youth, but the other thing about the American culture is that starting in 1920 with the advent of the motor car, we got up and we moved.
Yeah.
And so families are scattered. Mine is scattered between Great Britain and all the way to Alaska.
Yeah.
And so
So we're not near the elder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they end up on raisin farms.
They end up on raisin farms.
Oh, what a look for Ian.
Or they end up.
Apparently, the little grannies were annoying at the raisin farm today. He's putting a pillow over Gran's face.
Gently, very gently.
Gently. No, really, I was putting it under her head.
And that's
Sure.
and that's the other thing too, is that in becoming a crone, we have to remember not to become the bitter old woman.
Oh, that was my mother.
Because one of my grandmothers passed away about a year ago now, and she had said something so awful in front of my children that I had completely cut off contact with her. And she maintained up until her death that I needed to apologize for this. But the other thing too was that by the time she passed away, she was very, very alone because she had pushed everyone still alive away, and they wanted nothing to do with her because she was so bitter and had been slipping into dementia but wouldn't admit it. So she would accuse people of lying and stealing, and because she had forgotten. And so that's the thing that we have to watch out for, is that we can be blunt and direct and brutal when necessary, but becoming that nasty old woman is just no.
Well, it can be very much be a reaction to how you choose to react to how the world tries to pigeonhole you. And, just the fight against it can make you very angry. And Lord knows I get angry about it. But then I'm like, wait a minute, I can use this. Because someone hands me a weapon, okay.
Right.
But it is easy to fall into that space of feeling like the world has left you behind. You don't matter to anybody anymore. You're not a sexual person. You don't, there's a reason old women reach out and grab your hand, because nobody touches them anymore.
Yeah.
And, touch is an essential thing for human companionship,
And loneliness has
and it gets
profound physiological
it's
effects
really hard on you.
that accelerate the decline.
Yeah, and my grandmother, who died at 100 by her own choice, made a point of always having people around her and always making new friends and always reading books and always looking for things to expand her mind. And to me, that was a classic example of how to age properly.
Finding places of where there was joy in having it.
And finding joy in the weirdest small things, I mean, she'd be so happy about her geraniums every year. And repainting all of her gnomes. Every year she would sit down and we'd repaint all of her gnomes to put them in her yard. And I'm like, one gnome broke and it had something like 30 layers of paint. You couldn't see his facial features anymore. But it was that, to me, that was such a sign of consistency of choosing to live.
Yeah.
Choosing to be alive in her life.
Yeah.
And it's too easy to pull back and be bitter and hide. And
Well, and my husband and I were sitting on the porch a month or so ago, it was before the health crisis, and talking about my son moving out, and then we're going to have a spare room, which will be really nice. What are we going to do with this? And the possibility of one of my daughters moving into there because he's concerned about one of the girls, which I think is so funny because he was always the one of, when they're gone, they're gone. But
out.
And then he was like, and what are you going to do when I pass away? You're going to move and go? And I'm like, no, I love this little house. I want to stay here forever. And he's like, but you can't live here by yourself. And I'm
who's
like,
he to decide that for you?
well,
I mean, sorry, that's my response.
I understand his concern.
I get it, yeah.
And I'm like, well,
He doesn't want you to be alone.
when I get to the point where I need to have a companion, I'll find a young writer or somebody that can't live by themselves yet because they're still fledgling their wings in. And
We have a feral cat we can lend you.
yes, and I can have, and there's companionship, and I think that's another thing that with Crohn's there was actually a role called a companion, which was a young woman, and sometimes it gave the young woman a chance to travel and explore and do things she wouldn't have been able to afford on her own. And the older lady wasn't up to doing it by herself, so having a younger one to go with her and share in this adventure, I think that's a lovely idea.
You need to make more money. I need a companion.
We will work on that. You have a companion. Hello.
We do. who owes me 3 bedpans.
And I will pay whenever you need me to.
Like,
But let's hold off on that for like 10 years.
I don't intend to collect anytime soon.
Thank you.
And on that note, on the 3 bedpan rule, we should wrap this up.
We should, because we're recording on the 4th of July, and it's time to go hang with our friends. And if we get any further into this topic, poor Law Dog is going to turn purple. So
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh,
so
I think we have one more of these before we scatter again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I know.
So,
Do we scatter? I don't think we do.
Imaginarium.
We have Imaginarium,
It's
but
coming
that's
up.
on the weekend. That's 2. Is that 2 weeks from now?
It's coming right up.
We have another one of these to record before we go on another trip.
Yes.
Right?
All right.
And then
And
we're
there'll be
going on
another postcards challenge, so keep an eye out for that.
Yes.
So,
All right.
Oh my lord.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
bye.